What is up, everyone? Welcome into another episode of Titans Tube.
That is right. I cannot believe it, Caleb. The season is right around the corner. Training camps are underway. It is August. Preseason games are right around the corner too, so lots of excitement's happening. Finally, I feel like a kid on Christmas again, just waiting for football season.
But let's admit it, football season is way better than stupid old Christmas.
Yeah.
And you know one thing
Overrated.
that makes the football season even better? Fantasy football.
Fans everywhere, young and old, are organizing their fantasy football leagues, planning their draft parties, and before you ask, yes, because I know we're going to get a lot of comments about this, we are doing a Titans Tube Fantasy League again this year. But we're not going to discuss that in this video. That'll come in a later video. But we are doing the league, so we're going to bring it this year.
Yeah, that's right. And so being the dedicated Titans fans we are, and we know that you are, if you're watching this channel, we know that you are going to want to draft all the Titans players to your fantasy team this year.
Yes.
Obviously. So let's get right into our breakdown, starting with the quarterback position. And Marcus Mariota, because everyone's going to want to draft him. Okay, a few stats about Marcus Mariota from last year. He didn't get to play all the games, but he was still the 13th overall ranked quarterback in fantasy, putting up 259 points. That's over 3,400 yards passing, 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. And he's also a rushing threat. He had 349 rush yards and 2 touchdowns, but 3 fumbles. And as we all know, those are negative points. So Justin, going into the 2017 season, how do you foresee Marcus as a fantasy asset to a possible team out there?
Trying to look at this through not my fandom of eyes I have for Marcus. I truly think he is going to continue on his growth. I think he's going to put up an even better fantasy year this year. As we know, he has weapons surrounding him. He's, as far as we can tell, we went to a training camp practice. He's moving around great after his broken leg, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. We like Mariota's outlook. I think he can finish in a top 10 quarterback range this year in fantasy football.
I agree with you. With more weapons, I think he's poised for a solid year. The only thing that I feel like could hurt his production would be our reliance on the run game, because we are a run-first team. But he was having a great year last year. So,
for sure.
Didn't stop him from putting up those numbers. The injuries did, though. The broken fibulas. No more broken fibulas.
Now, moving on to the running back position. Last year, looking at our running backs, DeMarco Murray killed it. He was the 5th ranked fantasy football running back last year. With 240 points, he ran for 1,287 yards, 9 touchdowns, had 3 additional receiving touchdowns. So he was killing it. And then, of course, Derrick Henry made the most of his opportunities as well when he got them. He looks like he's primed to kill it too, and I think he could have a better year as well. But I don't know, Caleb, how do you see these two running backs in the workload that they may or may not split?
Yeah, people are thinking they may share some of their workload as opposed to last year where DeMarco Murray clearly got the majority of the touches. I still think DeMarco Murray is a solid starting running back. Draft him early and often, depending on how many leagues you're in. But I actually look for his production to decrease a little bit. He was 5th overall in running backs last year. I think the workload's going to be split a little bit more to where we'll see that production drop just a tad. But I mean, behind our offensive line with more weapons, I still see him putting up over 1,000-yard season with multiple touchdowns. And don't forget, he's a big receiving threat too out of the backfield, which is one reason he was so high in fantasy. And Derrick Henry, last year in our video, I think we told you that maybe pick him up on waivers or late in the draft, one of the later rounds. But I think he could be a solid flex position, probably hitting his peak later in the year after DeMarco Murray's kind of taking the brunt of the load. But I see Derrick Henry as being a really good flex option, maybe getting the brunt of the load later in the season, so kind of carrying your team into the playoffs. So possibly look to pick him up in the later rounds. I would not draft both of them on the same team, however, if I were you. Next position, we have the wide receiver, which is increasingly becoming a very profitable position. Yeah. And we have, last year, our wide receivers were pretty risky. This year, we have a lot of good options for you. One of our best options last year, Rashard Matthews. He was our best option. 14th ranked wide receiver, very surprising. Put up great numbers. 146 TDs. Total points. That was almost 1,000 yards, receiving 9 touchdowns. He did lose 1 fumble, but what have you. But his production might drop a little bit because we did sign Eric Decker this year in the offseason. Now, Eric Decker only got to play 3 games last year, but in those 3 games, he put up 31 total fantasy points, so he averaged double-digit points per game. So I'd like to see how he turns around this year. But don't forget, we also drafted Corey Davis, number 5th overall, supposed to be a dynamic playmaker. And we also have Taywan Taylor, another 3rd-round pick out of Western Kentucky, who put up massive production in college, looking to get some playing time, possibly as a number 3 or number 4 guy. Who would you draft? Who would you stay away from?
It's kind of a headache because we don't know who's going to be the lead guy at this point. I mean, honestly, I could see one receiver leading our team in receptions, another one leading the team in yards, and then a 3rd receiver leading the team in touchdowns. It could be spread all across the board. I think we're going to find out a lot in preseason who may step up to the plate. But if I had to guess, if we had made this video a couple weeks ago, I might not have said this, but watching Eric Decker and how he seemingly has fit in really well already with the offense, I think he's going to be a red zone beast, and touchdowns are the name of the game, and I think he's going to get a fair share of opportunities to score a lot of touchdowns. So I think he very well may be our most productive receiver. Right now, I would say stay away from Taywan Taylor, but however, keep an eye on him in the waiver wire. If one of those 3 receivers goes down, snatch him up right away because he is a really good-looking young receiver, making plays, splashing in training camp. So yeah, definitely keep an eye on him. But I would say initially stay away from Taywan Taylor. That's my opinion.
I agree with you. I think the production is going to be spread across the board in terms of receivers here. So I would stay away from drafting one as your 1st overall wide receiver taken.
So then, who do you think? How would you rank the receivers if you were picking and you really needed a receiver and you saw Decker, Davis, and Matthews? Who would you pick from those 3?
I think Decker should go first out of those 3 just because I think he's going to be that red zone threat. I'm looking for him to kind of lead the receivers in touchdowns. And like you said, touchdowns are where the point's at. I'm going to have Corey Davis as number 2 because I think he's going to put up some... I don't think he's going to be as consistent, especially for a rookie, but I think he's going to have a few huge games. So maybe as a number 2 quarterback, or a number 2 wide receiver, or a flex possibly in a few games, but definitely not your starting one receiver. As far as Rashard Matthews goes, I know he had a great year last year, but he was pretty much the only guy, minus Delanie Walker. Yeah. So I'm looking for his production to slide a little bit. I still think he could find some solid production, kind of a mixture of both yards and touchdowns. But I think Decker, Davis, and Matthews is how I would rank them.
Moving on to tight ends. Possibly another player that may see a slight decline in production just because we have so many more receiving threats now on the team is Delanie Walker, who last year killed it again, had a great year, finished as the 5th ranked tight end in points, scored 123 points in fantasy, and his official stat line was 65 receptions, 800 yards, 7 touchdowns, so good production for a tight end 1.
I actually see him not putting up the same amount of yards, but I think he's still going to be a great red zone threat. I mean, 7 touchdowns from a tight end, I think that may actually increase this year with all the weapons now that are going to be spread around in the red zone. And we know how good Marcus Mariota is in the red zone. He has that chemistry and that security blanket with Delanie already established. So yeah. I'm kind of looking for Delanie's red zone numbers, especially in terms of touchdowns, to increase this year. So I think he should be another top 5 tight end taken. Moving on to what should be the bottom of your fantasy draft board, unless you're an idiot. Defense, special teams, and kickers. So last year, the Titans defense ranked 19th overall in the league in terms of fantasy points scored with 95 points. Not very good, kind of middle of the road. Surprisingly, though, we finished with the exact same amount of points as the Houston Texans defense, which a lot of people thought would be really good last year, and they just didn't put up the points. In fact, I even drafted them pretty early, but not too early, because I'm not an idiot. But anyways, our defense last year had 40 sacks, which was tied 6th most in the NFL. Not bad. 18 takeaways, tied 23rd. Kind of bottom half right there. We had 1 fumble return touchdown, but we had a big stat here not giving us many points. 0 special teams returns. I'm talking kicks and punts for touchdowns. Justin, do you see our defense panning out any differently this year in terms of fantasy production?
I think the Titans could finish in a top 14, close to the top 12 range. I think you should keep an eye on them. We've got Morgan and Casey and Arakpo rushing the passer. They get a lot of sacks. You said we were ranked 6th in the league in sacks. And we've added Eric Walden. Kevin Dodd is going to be healthy this year, so that number could very well go up. Also, we added improvement on our secondary. Hopefully those interception and turnover numbers will increase with Logan Ryan, Kevin Byard stepping up. Hopefully he has a breakout year. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and we have the talent to do that. And the wild card here is our man, our first-round draft pick, number 18 overall, Adoree Jackson. If he turns out to be what we think he can be as a punt and kick returner, then I think, yeah, we're primed to have a pretty good defense/special teams in regards to fantasy.
Drafting the Titans defense is still a risk overall. There's better options out there. However, it could be a possible, sleeper defense here, depending on how well our return game does this year. So keep an eye on that. But overall, not one of your top defenses. Okay, last and least, actually, depending on who you ask about defenses or kickers. But we have the kicking position, and Ryan Succop, who was the 20th ranked kicker, put up 111 points. Yeah, we know he's extremely accurate, but that doesn't necessarily translate into, fantasy points scored. What do you think about Ryan Succop as a fantasy option for kickers?
He is extremely accurate. He actually finished third in the NFL in field goal percentage. He just didn't see a lot of volume as far as field goal attempts go. We still have a really good, promising offense. And I mean, if you have a great offense in fantasy, then that kicker is probably going to see a lot of points as well.
I don't think you should draft him, but he could be a viable option if your kicker's on a bye and you really need someone who's not going to just sink your team. He's going to put up a few points per game.
That's actually a good point to bring back to the Titans defense and special teams. If the defense that you did draft is on a bye week, the Titans would be, I think, a great substitute defense for you that week.
Waiver wire pickups, bro. Waiver wire pickups.
Waivers are where you win championships.
Well, that's it for our fantasy breakdown in terms of Titans players you should draft or not draft. So follow our rules and our instructions, and then you'll probably win your fantasy league.
Yeah, or you'll be the laughing stock. It could go either way.
And like Justin said earlier, we are doing a fantasy league. Stay tuned in another video for more details. If you think you can beat us, you're wrong.
We welcome the challenge.
We welcome it, but we know you're wrong.
How did you do last year? You were like bottom half of the league.
Thanks for watching. Y'all keep it swifty.
Oh yeah, you gotta get swifty. You gotta get swifty in here. It's time to get swifty. Uh-oh, you gotta get swifty. Oh, yeah.
That's a respectable opinion. Correct. We need the script. Oh, dude, that's all you say.
Yeah, I said my line.
Okay. I can't believe I can't remember my line.
Tell me. Gotta get back into the groove.
One more time, then I quit. Okay. Is it hot in here, or is it just me? Okay.
No, it's good. It's good, man. It's good. It's good. Check. Let's just move on.
No.
Yeah. Wait. Who that gonna be? Who that gonna be? Put up the fantasy points. How does that sound?
Yeah.